Well, I'm probably one of the most unlikely shaman. And I say that because my background is physics, mathematics, engineering. And I looked at all of healing, natural healing, anything that was mystical as a bunch of nonsense. And we had a daughter that was allergic to bee stings and wasp stings. And she had been stung twice in her life as a child. And the second time was much worse than the first. She was stung on the arm and it swole and it took 3 weeks before it healed. And, we took her to the doctor and he said, look, these things just tend to get worse with every sting. They don't get better. And so you should get EpiPens in the event it happens again, because she could go into anaphylactic shock. My wife decides to take a course in Reiki. And I thought, oh, lovely, total nonsense, but. And so she does a year of Reiki training. And then our daughter gets stung by a wasp. And she must have been 9. She comes running to the front door and she's crying. Her leg is already swelling. I say to my wife, let's get her in the car and get her to the hospital. And my wife says to me, let me do Reiki on her. And I said, she's going to die. And he said, give me 10 minutes. I said, okay. And so she began. Within 15 minutes, our daughter had calmed down completely. Her breathing had eased instead of becoming more troubled. And the next day, it was almost as if you couldn't even see a wasp sting. There was no swelling. It was incredible. It had just healed miraculously. And so for the first time, I sat up and said, well, wait a minute. There must be something to this. And so a year later, along with my daughter, we both went and studied Reiki. She was the youngest one in the class. I was the oldest. And we did Reiki to 3rd level. And so after that, I mean, once I had Reiki under my belt, I couldn't explain it, but it sure did work. I mean, we'd be out, um, you know, to dinner. Someone got burned um, barbecuing fish on the grill, and I would do Reiki on them, and it was incredible because the pain was gone. Same with headaches. So I became like the local witch doctor. As time went on, I found out about another healing that attracted me. I had gotten divorced by then, and I was with another woman, and she was actually an MD. She was an MD, but with a very open mind. And she found out about it first and said, well, what do you think about this? And so I looked at it, and it was shamanic training that was taking place in California. And it was called the Four Winds School of Shamanic Training. I thought, well, yeah, this is interesting. Let's do it. And so we signed up and we went to the first 1 week long training course. The way that the course is taught is the shaman follow the points of the compass. And so there's the south, which is where we begin. And then we go to the west, then the north, then the east. And so the training of the south was quite traumatic. I mean, there may have been 100 of us, but it was all about shedding, and it was accelerated shedding. It was letting go of energetically of everything. So I mean, we learned about the auric field that which I knew before, but the auric field that surrounds us, and the chakras, and how if the chakras are out of alignment, they can have an absolute physical effect and actually produce disease over time. And we learned how to bring them into alignment, how to do what was called an illumination on the client, and align the chakras so that you could prevent physical disease or even mental disease. And in fact, you could correct things quite quickly with that modality. Of course, we also were told that if nothing changes in the life of the individual, in the thought patterns of the individual, in how and in how they live their day-to-day life, then the chakras will quickly become unaligned again. And so there was homework that we were taught to give clients that had to do with shifting energy, that had to do with making this a more permanent fix on the chakras and the energy body, rather than having to come back every few months for retuning. And so what we learned there was that having an electromagnetic field that is properly aligned is crucial to a healthy life, and that it was energetic. The healing was energetic rather than, herbal or physical in any way. And and many times we were able to cut right to the heart of the matter without even discussion with the person that you're working on, without discussion about what is the problem, how are you feeling, what's wrong. You can just check the chakras, and immediately you can see where the problems are, and what they may manifest as, because each chakra is responsible for a different facet of the physical. At home, in your skin, whether you're feeling at home where you live in the country that you are, how you project yourself into the world, who you are you sure of yourself, are you unsure of yourself? All of that is there. Is your heart open and loving, or have you for some reason closed down because of some problem in the past with a relationship that's gone bad, or you've been hurt, or for many reasons? Do you bite your tongue when you should be expressing your truth? Do you hold in everything? All of this can be seen through the chakras. So there isn't really much need for discussion in terms of like with if you went to see a therapist, you would sit and talk endlessly about the problems and so forth. Or even if you went to see a Western doctor, you would talk about the symptoms and so on and so forth. When you go to see a shaman, there are no questions. The body will tell you right away. The auric field will tell you right away what's wrong. No need for lengthy discussions. And so this was the beginning. This was the very first. And we all shed so much so quickly. Then 6 months later, after practicing for hours and hours and hours of illuminations, we went back and did the second direction, which was the West. And in the West, you learn all about um, tracking, uh, tracking things. Where did something go wrong? You learn about energies may attach themselves to your auric field or develop in the auric field like a puncture in the auric field. You can feel these energies. They're actually, they call them crystalline energies because they they are hard. They don't move. They are specifically in one place in the body and in the auric field, and you can pull them out. You can sometimes they feel like a dart or a needle, something sharp that is stuck in that almost has a handle that you can pull. Typically, these energies they occur when we have trauma in our lives, when we go through a traumatic process. It's almost as if we've been stabbed energetically. We had to work on each other as partners for hours, looking for stuff, pulling it out. And my girlfriend at the time, who had been doing the course with for a number of years, from the time that I'd met her, she could not raise her her arm, her right arm, any higher than than shoulder height because it was painful. And she'd been to a number of doctors, and they couldn't find a reason for it. And unbelievable, but I was checking her, and under her arm, there was something stuck in there energetically. And I just grabbed it because we were doing our clearing sessions, or I grabbed it and pulled it out. Now, of course, I wasn't even touching her, but I grabbed it energetically and pulled it out. And she actually went, ow! It, she felt it. But the amazing thing was that 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, she could raise her arm above her head, no problem. The pain was gone. And that was like an affirmation to both of us that there was something to this. And so there are these energies that don't belong to us that we learn how to remove. They will drain your energy, they will hurt physically, etc., etc. So that's one aspect. There is another type of energy. Those were called liquid energies because they moved around in the auric field. More accurately, they are actually entities. Having seen the film The Exorcist so many years ago, and the whole thing being so frightening, but it turns out that the majority of cases like this, and again, what happens is you can feel quite drained because there is someone attached to you, an entity attached to you that is draining your energy. But most of the time, that entity is someone who was close to you, who may have passed, but loved you so much, was so comfortable around you, loved your energy so much that instead, especially if it is an accident where something happens, the transition happens very quickly. So we learned how to lovingly extract that energy in a very kind way and release it to the universe to go home.
Can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
Because all of that's really fascinating. My background, I was raised as a Catholic, and
Right.
I had a really amazing radical spiritual awakening in 1989. And coming out of my sort of Catholicism, I had no understanding about, energy or the shamanic path. But, I was aligned with a yogic path because it was a great yogi that gave me initiation in a lucid dream. However, coming out of that, what I realized is these great yogis who give initiation are master shamans. I mean, they move through time and space. They know how to extract energy that's stuck or heal anything. And with respect to what you're saying, soon after I had Shaktipat initiation, I was very interested. It kind of blew everything open for me. And I became very interested in healing modalities. And I did a week-long crystal healing workshop that was held at Unity, the old Unity Church of the Bahamas in Palmdale.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely fascinating. And I had learned enough to be able to protect myself. But I think it was on the second day, the facilitators were having people release all these very strong, really intense negative emotions. And I remember thinking, you could feel the energy of it. And then literally the day after, I started to feel really ill. And this went on 2 or 3 weeks. And I'd start to have a sore throat and, or feel like I was coming down with the flu or whatever it was, And I think after 2 or 3 weeks, I felt so ill one day. I said, I told my boss at work, I have to go home. I'm not feeling well. And I went home, lay down, and started repeating the mantra that I'd been given, Om Namah Shivaya, which is I bow to the light within me. And I went into an altered state, and I saw there was this massive, like almost black gray, big cloud that was like this amorphous mass that was attached. There was a great long sort of tendril coming from it, and it was attached to my lower back on the left, which is where I'd had an injury some years before. So it had attached to this weak part of my physical body, and it was literally sucking the life out of me. And so I started to repeat the mantra, and I was saying, in the name and through the power of, the great beings, I release you and send you into the light, because I didn't want to send it off and have it attached to somebody else.
Right.
But I really worked very hard to release it, and eventually it went. And literally from the minute that left me, I started to feel my normal self, full of energy and vitality again. And so what I realized is all of these things are really real. And, all of this is absolutely true. And the other thing that master yogis say is that any illness or condition begins in the subtle body in response to what is happening in one's life. If you're unhappy about something, you can't, as you said, can't speak up, or something's happened to you, there's some trauma or whatever, it starts in the subtle body. And if it's not resolved and healed emotionally, then and you're trying to kind of like push it away or block it or whatever, or it's just sitting there, it eventually manifests, it moves down and it manifests in the physical body. And again, I know that is absolutely true. So, every single thing that you have said so far, I've had direct experience of through my own journey with these great yogi shamans who teach in the same way. So there's these wonderful parallels. And I don't think it matters what background you come from. When you start studying energy, you see the same proof, so to speak.
Yeah,
you see
absolutely.
the same proof of it, even in your own direct experience, without necessarily having to study per se. You know what I mean?
Right.
It shows up, and it's just so incredible because it does have an effect. And I've also had experiences with negative attachments, let's say, or forces that I've had to do battle with. And I think that's part and parcel. We don't speak about these things much because, I think there's a tendency to want to focus on the light and the beautiful things. But, in the process of that and deepening and connecting fully with God or source or whatever you want to call it, you're going to come up against having to do battle with your own inner demons, as well as to do battle with dark forces or negative energy or attachments or whatever you want to call those things that do show up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Everything you say resonates with what I know. And there's a couple of things there. Number one, protection. What we learn first and foremost is protection. So what we do before we start is we open sacred space. And by creating a field around us that, first of all, makes us invisible to any opportunistic energies or entities that may be searching. And then there's a second layer of sacred space, a personal one that we open on top of that. So there's a layer within a layer, and that comes from bringing down the energy from what the shaman called the eighth chakra, the Viracocha, which is the Quechua word for it, the Andean indigenous peoples call it that. It's a ball of light above our heads, like an eighth chakra, and we bring the light down over ourselves and over the person we're working with. And so there's a tremendous amount of protection. And what I should tell you is that I have worked with people who have been in deep trouble. One particular woman came to me, and she was mother of young children, totally exhausted, diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I believe it was. And she'd been from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor and nothing. And so finally, out of desperation, she came to me. Again, I didn't ask very many questions. I just started working on her. And normally the sessions that I do are at the most an hour. 2 hours into it, I'm pouring sweat and I'm still pulling stuff out of her. And I asked her, how did you get like this? What happened to you? I've never seen anything like this. You are just full of stuff that doesn't belong to you. And she told me that because she grew up in a wealthy, well-off family, her entire high school, college years were sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And every time that we are blind drunk or high as kites, we open ourselves wide up to anything opportunistic that wishes to get a free ride and partake of our energy, because you become hugely visible to everything out there. You become like a huge target. That's number one. Number two is sexual energy. When you have intercourse with multiple partners, you get the energy from them as well. You share that energy. They impart that energy, and whatever they've picked up, it's like a spiritual STD. Whatever they've picked up, you end up with, or you can also pick up. And so he was literally dying from lack of vitality. There was nothing left in her energetic field for her. It was all being consumed by, and so she came to see me a total of 3-4 times before it shifted. We'd gotten rid of enough of this crap that she started to feel better, and so it can be like that. And then it's not just these two types of energies. There's also what are called cords, which cannot be pulled out. They need to be cut. And usually cords are connected to another person. And usually it comes in the form of, perhaps a dysfunctional marriage or codependency or something along those lines, where energy is being sucked from you by, inadvertently, perhaps by your partner. And then we have to do surgery. We physically cut the cords with a knife. And I mean, there's no bleeding, but it's just done at the level of the skin and cauterized and all of it. And so, yes, it very important that you work with protection. Very important that so that you don't pick up other stuff while healing is going on. And then be careful when you attend mass ceremonies where people are shedding, where things are being, and not in a controlled way, not in a way that is protected, and the entities being guided to the light that are being released, but basically throwing off of energies, and who knows where they're going to land. I teach this course, Shamanic Healing, at the Sivananda Yoga Retreat here. And as part of the training, I tell the students who are practicing to be very careful when they're clearing out chakras and unwinding and taking the stuck energy out. You're meant to throw it, give it to the earth to mulch, but be very careful where you're throwing it, because you have like 5-10 groups, pairs, they're practicing as shaman and client. Be careful you're not scooping up energy, negative energy that you're extracting, and throwing it onto someone who's just happens to be next to you, because you're not careful. First of all, to work with protection. Secondly, to know how to deal with the problem that what you're seeing, to resolve it in a way that does not cause harm, does not cause any further harm, does not cause anyone else harm, and that the entity is released to the light. So that was another difficult direction that we did, because the South and the West, they're not easy, and they weren't fun either. But the third direction, the North, had a certain sweetness about it. That's when things started to shift. Here we learned about soul retrieval, and the idea being that, again, when something traumatic happens, when there is trauma, a soul fragment can break off, and you're no longer the person you were before. You've changed, and something's gone away. We go on a journey for the client, for the person there with us, look for the soul fragment and have dialogue with it, and see if it's ready to return. Sometimes we bring disjointedness, or rather, the soul part that broke off in a previous life was never reunited, and so there's still a break there. But we go into what is called the chamber of wounds, which is where that first wounding took place, where that break took place. It can be in many forms. Sometimes it's a little child that's crying in the corner, and other times it's a very angry teenager. Other times it's a recalcitrant old man. I mean, it all depends on what has taken place. In most cases, I found the soul part is not ready to return, mostly because the person has not done enough of their personal work for the soul part to feel comfortable in returning. But there are times when it says, yes, I'm ready to come back. And that's great. Second part of that is that we go into a chamber of contracts, where we will see something written. It can be written on the wall. It can be written on a piece of paper on the table. It can be written, a book that falls off a shelf and opens to a certain page. It can be whatever. You will see something written, and it says it has to do with the original contract that was made before coming, or it can actually be an altered contract where a person has given up or has resigned themselves, and you will see negative language in the contract if that is the case. And as a shaman, we will change the wording of the contract and take out the negativity, rewrite it in a positive light. And so, the word not is taken, can't is taken and changed to can and will, and etc. And so then the third chamber that we come across is called the chamber of grace. And in this chamber, typically there is a light being, an incredible source of love and light that has deep, deep, deep love for the person that you are working on. And they will tell you something. It may be words of encouragement. It may be words of caution. It may be many different things, but always in a very loving way is it expressed. And there is so much joy and so much light and so much love there. And finally, the fourth chamber is the chamber of gifts. A gift is given. You walk in and you see a gift. And I've seen the strangest gifts, like a pair of sandals, and a chipped bowl. In one case, I was working on this woman, and I saw a wedding ring when we come out, we will then blow that gift into the heart chakra. And that's where it resides. And so after I did that, and of course, we will talk with them and tell them what we experienced. And quite often, it doesn't mean anything to me, but it means something to them. And when I told her about the wedding ring, she just laughed and laughed and laughed. She says, I was married years ago. I'm not, I'm not looking, I'm not interested. I mean, that's just nonsense. And then, honestly, 2 months later, she calls me or she messages me and says, I met someone wonderful. I'm getting married. So that is the work of the North. And finally, the work of the East is to do with what is called the great death ritual, to prepare someone for transitioning, making things right with all those that you love and love you, and things that may have gone wrong and you haven't spoken to each other in years, bringing that to clearing that up before leaving, recapitulation, speaking to the person in such a way that they understand how important it is that this be done before leaving. Once that person passes, then we do what is called the great unwinding of the chakras. We unwind them all and lift that energetic body out and send it on its way. And then we close the chakras by putting a cross. That's when you put a cross. A funny story, one of our teachers, in fact, the one who created the school, the Four Winds, his name is Alberto Vialdo. He's a medical anthropologist, or he was. That's how he found out about this. He went to Peru to do his PhD in medical anthropology. And it turned out that the shaman there that he ended up meeting told him, no, that's not what you really came for. You came to learn this so that you can set up a school in North America to teach this, because it's time that this knowledge is spread far and wide. His father, he got message, he was in Peru, and he got message that his father was quite old, was in hospital and didn't have long to live. And so he flew there, but he didn't arrive in time. His father had passed. And when he entered the room, a Catholic priest was giving the final rites and doing the cross, and he on all of his body, and he grabbed the priest and he gently led him out of the door. He threw him out, really, and closed the door, put a chair underneath it so it couldn't be opened, did the great unwinding, lifted the energetic body, sent it off, then closed the chakras, then let the priest back in. Because the last thing you want to do is close the chakras with the energetic body still there.
Wow. So do you teach all of that? Do you teach all of that in your training at the Sivananda Ashram, or just a bit kind of basics?
We, as much as possible. Okay, so there isn't a whole lot of time. The course I do over there is usually 2 satsangs and 2 workshops. In the workshops, we will do certainly illuminations. We try to stay away from extractions, pulling stuff out of people, because that can go awry fairly quickly. What I loved about the shamanic training, that it was so diverse, quite a large toolbox of things to work with. I was literally blown away by how wide and varied the topics were, and how powerful the entire body of knowledge is.
Well, I'm just looking at the time. Time goes so fast, and I could certainly listen to you for hours and hours. It's been really fascinating. But before we close off, would you like to just share where people can find you, or how they can get in contact with you if they want a personal one-on-one session, which I'm assuming you still do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a bit of a closet shaman, but I do shamanic healing and training as a way to give back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a lot of people who come and see me, but I don't advertise. And I don't have a website. The best thing I can do is give you a phone number or give you an email address, and you can reach me that way.
That's
Yeah.
okay. But they can also reach you on Instagram, correct?
Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram. Yeah, Theo Tsavoussis.
Excellent. Right. So
Yeah.
they can private message you and find you that
Oh
way.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
All right.
Instagram works perfectly.
Excellent. So
Yeah.
I can put that in the show notes, and I'll also put the Shivananda website in the show notes too. So, people can just click and go to make it easier. All right. Well, Theo, thank you so, so much for joining me today. This has been really great. I've learned a lot, and it's actually been really insightful for me because of the parallels. There's been I didn't want to interrupt you with, all the way through, but so many times what you shared has been my direct experience through the yogic path too. So that is really fascinating. So thank you so, so much.
Wonderful.
This has been really great. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Julie.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us. As always, I really appreciate it. If you have enjoyed this episode, then please subscribe and let other friends and family members know, and spread the word. So that's all from us for today. Over and out. Take it easy, be well, and sending you much love. Bye.